Hello to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another edition of this program proposed to you by Globus as we continue to analyze the latest development in the global world. And our focus again remains in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where we want to look at the diplomatic stalemate of Feud, which have actually come to the limelight as a result of the recent development in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where the M23 rebels have overwhelmed the region, and then with a lot of stakeholders involved, we are looking at how this is continuing to frustrate the diplomatic ties existing between regional bodies and even international bodies. The DRC crisis has bred intense diplomatic feuds stemming from the failure of the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo and other major stakeholders to manage the situation in the eastern DR Congo effectively. This has, however, exacerbated the violence, giving the M23 rebels an added advantage over the city of Goma in a conflict that has been ongoing for over 30 years. Recent attacks and seizure of Goma have opened up a more complex web of diplomatic tensions among conflicting powers in the region, while the majority of the world points a finger at the Rwandan president Paul Kagame, accusing him of being the architect of this ongoing crisis. The Rwandan leader has continued to defend Kigali's position, asserting that the country has never been the source of instability in the volatile Democratic or Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It should be noted also that Germany has cancelled 8 talks with Rwanda. The UK as well has threatened Rwanda to sustain aid if Rwanda does not actually retract from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It should also be noted that South Africa's backing of Felix Tshisekedi in this crisis has actually frustrated its diplomatic ties with the government in Kigali. To note that this crisis has actually exposed the diplomatic incompatibility existing between the East African community and the Southern African Development Community. However, the two bodies have actually called for a summit to discuss the flare and see how they can adopt a common stance towards solving this the crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The spillover effects of the crisis are already evident. Therefore, the pressing question is how can these diplomatic tensions be curtailed to reduce their negative consequences that could be probably could potentially frustrate the concerted agenda of the stakeholders towards, writing a clear trajectory for the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And today, with Good News CADOGAN, a Pan-African leadership coach, we're going to probably listen to his opinion of what he has to say concerning the state of affairs in the Democratic Republic of Congo and how this can probably lead to a new path for peace and, the resolve to the crisis and how we can curtail the negative effect of diplomatic ties, particularly among regional bodies in the African continent. You're welcome once more. We're taking you now to Johannesburg in South Africa to say hello to Good News CADOGAN and welcome him, accepting to actually share his viewpoint pertaining the latest developments in the DRC. So, Mr. CADOGAN, while welcoming you, want to already present this question, of course, what holistic analysis can you advocate in terms of diplomatic ties since the escalation in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
Thank you very much, and good day to your listeners, Clarice. I believe that here it's one of those things that is so complex that even myself, as a seasoned analyst, I don't even know where to begin. But I will begin at the level of leadership. just looking at the different players that are involved here. The president of Rwanda, the president of the DRC, the president of Burundi, the president of Uganda, because in that region, all these presidents are involved. But we cannot ignore that there are leaders that are not ordained. The leader of the M23, for example, and various other smaller rebel groups that may be involved. So at best, when one is a leader at a national level, they need to take care of the long view of their state. And in this case, I don't believe President Kagame, for example, is taking a long view. He's taking a short view. He is using the chaos that exists in the region to stamp out his power and use some kind of a guilt around what the Rwandan people suffered in 1993, which is a legitimate suffering. But it doesn't give him a license to actually see himself as a leader in the region who can intervene as an individual in an extra judicial kind of way, and also in an extra diplomatic channels that are available to him. Because President Kagame or his state is a member of the African Union, is a member of the regional body that is a sub-body of the African Union. He is supposed to stick to that and use those channels to intervene and help in the chaos that is happening in the eastern region of the DRC. But on the other hand, if we go inside the DRC and look at President Tshisekedi, he also suffers from the same kind of challenges, where he's not able to look far into the future. One of our past presidents described the situation in eastern DRC, that the people in that region do not feel the administrative arm of the central government in Kinshasa. And because of that, they may feel that they are neglected. So they are feeling like, if it was a family, as if they are third and fourth cousins who are not taken care of by the head of the family. So in the end, where are they going to go to look for help? Certainly they're going to go outside, and they fall straight into the arms of people like President Kagame from Rwanda. So there's a need to actually strengthen the leadership, the national leadership of the DRC, such that it goes all the way to the end of the border in the east.
Absolutely.
And make those people to feel that they belong. Because when you don't belong, you can easily mistreat what is in your hands. And that region is rich in minerals, and there is a real and apparent kind of incentive for President Kagame to help those people and take those minerals and export them for the benefit of his state.
And looking at that, and with your preamble that actually questioned the leadership policy or stance across Africa, we want to now see how the power dynamics are actually changing in the DRC. And to note, Mr. Good News Cadogan, it should be noted that according to a representative of the M23, who recently spoke to SABC News South Africa, highlighted, of course, that the M23 are part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they even actually supported President Felix Tshisekedi in 2018 when he was actually campaigning to take over the baton of command there in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and actually this led him to winning. So now, how can we probably see how the actions of maybe politicians wanting to ascend the throne of leadership, probably they'll use the a weaker group to attain that objective, but at the end, they actually do not fulfill the demands or promises made to particularly the M23 rebels, which have actually brought us to where we are in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, terming them rebels wanting to overwhelm or the Kinshasa government.
Leaders in general. And this is a historical challenge that comes with how the African body, the human body of the African, how it has been treated by those who colonized Africa. At that point, maybe we can point back to the 1700s and even earlier. The colonizers actually dehumanized the African body to such an extent that an African is seen as a less than kind of being that can be mistreated, that can be killed at will, that can be deprived of its rights, so that in the end is not treated in the same way like a Westerner or the white male as a representative of this global prejudice is treated. So when President Tshisekedi won the elections, he did not commit to being the president of all Congolese people. From border to border, from east to west, from south to north, and make sure that they are protected from all the ills of the neighbors that may befall them. And also protect them from all the ills of the internal conflict, which usually begins with either religion or tribalism. So a leader that cannot unite people from his nation that speak the different languages or come from different subgroups is not worthy to be a leader. Because a leader is supposed to have compassion for everyone, is supposed to have patience for everyone, is supposed to have love for everyone, and make sure that the needs of their people, whether it's that leader in today's terms, is not guaranteed that they're going to be a man. So he or she is the most appropriate pronoun here. So if that leader then is compassionate to his or her people, they may be easier to be seen as a leader that cares and a leader that takes the resources of the country, as in mining or agricultural products, and use them for the benefit of the whole population and not for his own or her own benefit.
Absolutely.
And before President Tshisekedi, we come from a history in DRC where there was President Mobutu Sese Seko, who then used the wealth of the country as his personal bank account. He became rich and enriched himself, and the lack of resources and the inability of the Congolese government to actually reach out to the ends of the borders can be traced to that era, because infrastructure development did not happen at that time. The two presidents, Kabilas, that took over afterwards, I am not sure that they did much to change the plight of the people of Congo, so that in the end, they may be protected from internal conflict and also from regional conflict, so that in the end, there would be resources to protect everybody across and around the borders that encircle the DRC.
And the argument which you just presented right now brings us again to a bone of contention to be able to understand, like we underlined in the preamble already, almost the whole world is pointing a finger at Paul Kagame. And then when you listen to your analysis, Mr. CADOGAN, we also see the lapses that are coming from the leadership in Kinshasa. Just to note that the recent development also led to new revelations where we saw, according to reports, some mercenaries who actually, succumbed and laid down their arms and actually moved towards Rwanda, asserting that they have been actually recruited by President Felix Tshisekedi to fight the M23. So now let's look at how this it's bringing us again to probably unravel the hidden face of the crisis which the world is not analyzing, instead of seeing Rwanda as the main architect of the volatility of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. How then can we harmonize all of these takes to be able to write the clear trajectory for peace in the Eastern DR Congo?
If you look even at the introduction of mercenaries from some of the European countries to help the DRC to defend itself, it emanates from the earlier claim or earlier analysis that I provided that the infrastructure in the DRC has not been developed well. The army has not been trained and developed well to be able to defend the territorial integrity of the DRC. It is for that reason then that President Tshisekedi would have asked for mercenaries, either from the Russians and other countries in Europe, to help him. Because even the peacekeepers from the United Nations and the ones from the SADC region, they are not enough to be able to defend the territorial integrity of the DRC. Because now, in the beginning, everybody thought that the DRC was facing armed conflict with M23, but now it has emerged that it's M23 plus the soldiers at the defense army of Rwanda. Yeah. So in the end, we need to actually find a situation whereby first we respect all the leaders there. They must respect the territorial integrity of the DRC. That's the first thing. Yeah. And secondly, they must ascribe to the calls from the organizations that they belong to actually be part of that. And I think a recent announcement by the United Nations actually calls for Rwanda to retreat from the borders of the DRC, but also on the other hand, to be prevented from actually participating in peacekeeping, because they can't have their cake and eat it. Yeah. Operate on the peacekeeping side, but also on the other side, they agitate for the conflict.
Sorry to interject, Mr. Cadogan. So are we confidently saying today that should Rwanda retreat from probably the Eastern DRC, something that the government has always said, trying to prevent what happened in 1994 from repeating itself in contemporary society? Should Rwanda retreat, do you think DRC or Eastern DRC will now know peace? Should Rwanda retreat?
No peace, because the SADC peacekeeping force, and also let's talk about the SADC peacekeeping force. It's there to prevent war from happening. If that mandate is changed such that they prevent the escalation of war and they actually launch an offensive against the M23, whilst on the other hand, a political situation, or rather a political solution, is actually negotiated so that the M23 can actually achieve its political demands. But it cannot be allowed to achieve so through arms. So beefing up the defense of the DRC through credible organizations and allied countries is one of the first things that I believe the leadership of the African Union should actually go for.
Indeed, bringing back the question to the African Union, the role the African Union has to play to actually curtail the flare in Eastern DR Congo. Now, Mr. Gadogan, I want us to be very clear and probably help our audience to understand. You know, these credible organizations which you just mentioned, probably you're calling on the UN and the role of the UN and other countries that are involved. But when we look at it critically, it's not only Rwanda, probably in terms of minerals, that is, taking advantage of this. We know how the Western world generally is in dire need. I quite remember a report that was released last year where we saw the urge, they were urging the countries to, probably Western countries, to build more ties with countries in Africa, particularly, Angola, Botswana, and all of these nations blessed with mineral resources because of the dire need of these minerals for the production of probably modern day electronics. So now, with all of these dynamics at play, are we certain that even the voice of the international community is authentic as far as the flare in Eastern DRC is concerned?
It certainly isn't authentic. In the same way that slavery and colonization was inauthentic, and no one wants to admit that it was a greed-driven kind of campaign by the West to come and plunder the resources in Africa, which then resulted in what we call in the development sector a resource curse. We can only turn the resource curse on the continent and also, particularly now in the DRC, by using and leveraging leadership and leveraging and strengthening the local and regional bodies. Local, I mean strengthening the national government, strengthening the regional bodies, and strengthening African Union as a bloc, and also stop exporting raw materials to the rest of the world. Once we stop that, we will then drown the inauthentic voice from the West, because we will tell them that if you want to manufacture batteries for cell phones, if you want to make batteries for electronic cars, and if you want to manufacture cell phones, bring the technology here so that our young people can be employed, and we will beneficiate those things here, and we will export to the rest of the world and use our products. Not iron ore, not gold, not cobalt, or any of the other resources, including food, by the way, needs to be processed that it comes out of Africa into the shelf of a shop in the West. That's how we should be.
Materialize if there is a strong foreign policy stance from the African continent or from African countries. Now we want to look at probably reducing the tension, diplomatic tensions, which some pundits feel like, okay, the crisis is already making it more tense, that it will even derail the probably a concerted effort or maybe a global stance by the African continent, not just on resolving issues, but trying to write a clear trajectory in the political, economic, and even the geopolitical sphere of the African continent. Let's come back to see if the impending meeting that will happen between the SADC and the East African community can resolve the stalemate. We want to be particular here between Rwanda and the Republic of South Africa. You can attest that in the past days or weeks, we saw that there was a high tension between South Africa, where Cyril Ramaphosa and Kigali, Rwandan Paul Kagame actually were not at ease with each other, pertaining South Africa's stance. Paul Kagame says South Africa and other Western countries are the ones benefiting from actually what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo and not Rwanda. So can we assert that this impending crisis meeting by the two regional bodies can solve this existing stalemate and, of course, probably focus on the agenda, which is probably taking back DRC to ensure that the country can benefit from its endowment?
President Kagame is displaying strength, and he is displaying brute force and physical action. This is the hallmark of dictators and narcissistic leaders that you find across the world. The only way you can stop such leaders from actually flourishing and spreading their ill-conceived ideas, and also a benefit of them being seen to be the hero amongst people who do not understand, what is going on. It's important for the other leaders, including President Cyril Ramaphosa, to actually display that they can meet force with force. And I'm not advocating for war here, because it is not possible for a weak state or a weak leader to change the position of a leader like Paul Kagame, unless he can see that his force will be met with twice as much or 3 times as much force. It's the only time that he will come to reason. So let's get the strength right first and the show of force right. And then the diplomatic conversations can happen. Once we know that we have shown the other side that we can also meet their threat where it is at. But because we're good people, we are not going to exercise force. Let us talk. But if you're not prepared to talk, we are not going to allow the things that happened that resulted into the 2 world wars, World War I and World War II, things that have happened that have caused the conflict in the Middle East, and things that have happened that have caused the war between Ukraine and Russia. All of those wars have been caused by leaders who display force and are prepared to actually exercise it at the expense of everybody else for their own narrow benefit.
For personal interest, Mr. CADOGAN, so are we saying that South Africa has no interest in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo? You talked about seeing how probably these problems can be solved diplomatically, but then we still see leaders standing, those declaring their full support probably for Felix Tshisekedi. I think that was yesterday that Cyril Ramaphosa reiterated support to probably the government of Kinshasa. The president actually vowed to probably be more defiant or take a harder stance in probably solving this crisis. And Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated support. Let's look at how, you know, the site taking is actually already an obstacle towards, you know, a clear diplomatic resolve of the crisis. Is that what African leaders should be doing at the moment, pointing a finger at Kagame and then also rallying behind Felix Tshisekedi? So is that the necessary step towards righting the wrongs?
Yes, it is. But in addition to backing President Tshisekedi and actually cautioning President Kagame for his behavior, there is a need for President Tshisekedi to strengthen the infrastructure in the DRC. The DRC as a state, it should not be run on the basis of crutches to help a limping state by deploying mercenaries and also deploying forces from South Africa and everywhere else. If he's going to have to do that, he also has to bring in the M23 leader, speak to them, find out what is it that is going to make them happy, and integrate or reintegrate the population of the people that are sitting in the Eastern DRC. In fact,
Engage the M23 leader when they said engaging them will already tell that they are recognizing their existence and probably wanting to listen to what actually their demands are.
In the beginning, President Tshisekedi refused to speak to the M23 leaders.
Yeah.
And he did not want to actually see them. In fact, the people that live in eastern DRC, at some point, even before his term, they were not seen to be bona fide citizens of the DRC. That is wrong. It's not acceptable. There needs to be, one, a recognition of the fact that there is no language actually called Rwandese. So I don't understand why some leaders, they also speak about the fact that the people in eastern DRC are speaking Rwandese. They don't speak Rwandese. They speak their language, and they are citizens of the DRC. If the administrative arm of government was strong enough, those people would be carrying DRC passports. And if those people were seasoned travelers, wherever they go, they would carry a DRC passport. They wouldn't carry a Rwandese passport simply because of the language that they speak. Language does not allocate me a country. In the background of the 1800s, when borders were created and people of the same kind of tribe and language were actually divided between 2 and 3 countries. Yeah. So those people are DRC citizens, and they should be treated as such. Then you remove the reason for the M23 to exist. And if the M23 wants to lead nationally, they must then contest the elections and present themselves to the population. And if the current ruling party loses the elections, then the M23 can then be the national leader. And then they have to also commit to support everybody in the country from east to west, from north to south, and prevent any other foreign powers, whether they be local, as in the region, African, or even international, from actually abusing the rights of the people of the DRC.
Okay, listening to your analysis, can we now say that you've just advocated probably some radical diplomatic strategies which can be adopted both by the leadership of Kinshasa and other regional bodies like the SADC and the EAC towards, de-escalating tensions in the North-South Kivu regions, probably in eastern DR Congo?
Exactly. It's a mixture of both. Show of force. It's like showing a fist in a silk glove and not using it until such time there's time to use it. But at the same time, use empathy, compassion, and patience to deal with the conflict so that you can embrace those that you did not embrace before, so that they can feel that they are part of this country. Because remember when we started, we talked about third and fourth cousins. Those need to be brothers and sisters of everybody that lives in the DRC and be accorded the same rights so that in the end, they can feel that they are part of the nation of the DRC. But those who then violate the territorial integrity of the DRC, after it has done that, they should be met with the force that they deserve.
Which is very imperative for Mr. Cadogan. Of course, appreciate you for this insight, but then we still want to look at how important it is to probably solve the stalemate over 30 years. This is what we can do, or probably what can we do, because people are already advocating for a third Congo war. Like if we look at the state of affairs and how there is actually probably defiance from all the stakeholders involved in this region, there are fears of the outbreak of a third Congo war. Do you share that same perspective?
Yes, it will happen if the national government or the government in Kinshasa is not aware of the dynamics as they develop. So it's important to use both diplomacy and force to prevent that war. so that it doesn't happen. And the chances of that war happening are very high if the president of Rwanda is not cautioned. That is President Paul Kagame. And then also, if Uganda and Burundi do not play along in the larger recognition of the territorial integrity of the DRC. And then domestically, the government in Kinshasa needs to quell the internal conflict by according the same rights to everybody, irrespective of tribe, language, or religion, so that everybody can pay allegiance to the government of the day, because that is what needs to happen. And if there needs to be a regime change in the DRC, it must happen according to the name. I always say the D in the DRC stands for democracy. So in the end, every process that is driven, it should be a democratic process, democratic solutions.
Indeed, a democratic process and democratic solutions, while contextualizing that. And of course, when we're talking about this, we're looking at the diplomatic stalemate and probably some of the external activities or probably consequences of what is happening. But, you know, there's already a humanitarian crisis. In your own perspective, Mr. Cadogan, can we say today that the voices of the people probably in the Democratic Republic of Congo have been heard, particularly on this stance towards what is happening? Because I think that when there is fighting, those who actually feel the consequences probably negative are those at the lower level, the communities. So do you think that their perspectives are actually heard by these political leaders, and how probably solving the diplomatic stalemate can indirectly or directly solve their own plights?
In the streets in the DRC, the ordinary person in the village or small town in the DRC, their voices are not heard at all. No one hears them.
Yeah.
And it is for that reason that a few days ago, we saw the French embassy burnt in Kinshasa, and then also 2 or 3 other countries' embassies were also burnt.
Rwanda, yeah.
And yes, and we also see that the people who are in the news are the leaders.
Absolutely.
But the people that you see suffering, ducking and taking cover for their lives are the ordinary citizens. As early as this morning, I saw a video showing sophisticated weapons being fired over ordinary citizens in Goma with their goats and other animals and even children, and finding it very difficult to accept that people can be subjected to this kind of violence. When they have a government that is supposed to defend them, and when they have voted for a government to protect them. Obviously, the government is not able to protect them, and as a result, their voice is not heard. And if President Tshisekedi wants to remain president of the DRC, he has to make sure that he protects the people of the DRC from the violence that is raging now.
Indeed, and also know the violence is raging, and also the diplomatic stalemate is actually increasing. But now there is need to look for the way forward. You know, as there is diplomatic tension, the M23 they have an added advantage. So we are going to conclude with this questioner, Mr. Cadogan. What are the key, probably indicators that could signal a potential progress towards resolving the diplomatic stalemate between the various actors in the region, and probably involving, improve these diplomatic relations that will probably bring one voice towards the problems faced by the region and the entire continent as a whole?
First of all, when we started this conversation, we spoke about the fact that it centers around specific leaders.
Absolutely.
There needs to be a change of heart in the person of President Tshisekedi and also President Paul Kagame, because they are the main antagonists when it comes to this conflict. They need to change how they see the world. They need to change how they see their people, and they need to change how they see their role. Because if President Paul Kagame believes that because he's got enough firepower, and also what we didn't talk about is where he's getting his firepower from. So some of our leaders are puppeteered by international players to take the positions that they take, so that in the end, people who live far away and are not affected by the violence that ensues, then actually influence how our leaders think.
Yeah.
That's the first part. There is a kind of an overarching change of strategy that needs to appear insofar as President Tshisekedi is concerned. He needs to protect the people of Eastern DRC from the violence, as in yesterday. And in order for him to do that, they have to use every firepower that is available. Their own army, the army from the peacekeeping nations that are involved there. So increasing the firepower of the peacekeeping forces is probably the number two change that needs to happen. We cannot negotiate when you are on the back foot and the M23 and the Rwandan army has got unfettered powers when it comes to the firepower that they have. If it required people in suits to actually keep peace, that is whom would have been sent there to keep peace. But if you can see from the armored trucks, the arms that the peacekeepers are carrying, it requires firepower to keep peace. And half the firepower is just a red herring that makes the people to feel like they are being protected whilst they are not. And thirdly, the other thing that needs to change is that those who puppeteer the conflict from behind the scenes need to be outed so that their names of the countries that do that are in the open, and we know who is influencing and empowering Paul Kagame and any other forces that are fighting there, who is empowering and helping the DRC as in the person of President Tshisekedi, and whether that support is legitimate and to what end. There's the last thing, sorry, Clarice, is to also create a view of how it must look like. Mm-hmm. We must feel it. We must always sort of be able to see that when peace is in the air, this is how it's going to feel like.
Okay. Thank you so much. Just to reiterate that it's about the leaders changing the dynamics, changing the roles, because for sure they understand quite well the politics or probably the dynamics in the region and how probably they can navigate to solve the crisis so that the local population can actually be at peace. Thank you again for your great insight and opinion on what is happening in the DRC. Probably we pray that with all of those at the end of probably taking decisions to end the war can actually fast track this and write a good trajectory for the DR Congo so that we can end decades of war which have engulfed the region. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for accepting of always having this rendezvous with Globus as we continue to bring to you the perspectives marking the new world in the contemporary society. Bye-bye and have a lovely moment. Thank you.